Good morning. It's great to be here today with Joe so we can share how we plan the marine space, how we can deliver secure, clean, renewable energy while ensuring a thriving marine environment. We manage an area that is twice the size of the land, and we have over 30 competing interests that we need to balance. But before we get into the detail, we just wanted to show you a short video that explains a little bit more about who we are.
Crown Estates is a company for the country.
We manage the seabed and much of the coastline around England, Wales and Northern Ireland.
The UK has achieved amazing things, the second largest operational fleet of offshore wind in the world, but we need to act quicker if we're able to meet our nation's net zero targets.
The Whole of Seabed programme makes use of a unique set of digital geospatial tools to create a detailed understanding of future resources and demands, such as habitat restoration or offshore wind, for example.
But having evidence and data is only one part of the picture. We're using the Whole of Seabed programme to create essentially an action plan for the future.
The detailed evidence base generated by the Whole of Seabed programme is key to making the right decisions around how we use and develop the seabed. We are using this to develop a 2050 marine delivery route map with our partners. This will coordinate action to deliver net zero and nature recovery and meet the demands of all key sectors that use the marine space.
We aim for our work to make a positive difference, inspire other nations and organisations.
And it's hard to imagine a more exciting and fulfilling role than the future of our journey to net zero and a thriving marine environment.
You might have spotted me in the video there. So, as you saw from the video, we manage areas across England, Wales and Northern Ireland. We have urban locations, rural locations, but today we're going to focus in on the marine space. So if we zoom in and take a look at the East Coast, we can see some of the marine activities that are present. So the marine space has the opportunity to help address some of the greatest challenges of our time. So for example, last year, we delivered enough electricity from offshore wind farms to power half of the UK's homes. But we know that's not enough. We know by 2050, we need to increase this 8-fold to power all of our homes and businesses and transport systems. We also have seabed cables that deliver that offshore wind power back into our electricity system. And we also have interconnectors with other countries where we connect our electricity system to theirs and trade. The seabed also contains absolutely critical minerals for construction. So last year, we dredged 20 million tons of sand and gravel from the seabed. And to put that in context, that's enough to fill the Millennium Stadium in Cardiff 8 times over, or closer to home, Wembley Stadium 3 times over. We still have oil and gas extraction and pipelines bringing that energy back to shore. But as we think about the future, we think about carbon capture and storage. How can we capture carbon from power stations that are still burning fossil fuels or from industrial processes and lock it away safely, securely under the seabed, away for future generations and also to hit our climate targets? We need to do all of this while preserving critical shipping routes. So all of us in the room rely on goods and services that come in through our ports. 95% of everything we use as a nation comes through ships and ports. We also have important fishing grounds, important for food security, but also important for the livelihoods and the coastal communities that thrive there. And we need to do all of this while, despite 40% of our marine area being protected for the environment, we still are suffering a biodiversity crisis. So we're working really hard at the Crown Estate to bring environment and nature more proactively into our decision making. And here we see what is probably the slowest dolphin in the east. So if we zoom out and bring this all together, we can see the marine space is incredibly busy. And that's the challenge that we're setting out for you this morning. How do we plan this space, move away from project by project planning to a more systems approach? How do we deliver everything that we need to into the future while ensuring we get jobs and growth, we look after the environment, and the communities thrive? And that's what you can see on the screen here. This is one of our 2050 scenarios. So this is us planning all of the activities that need to happen in the marine space to support our nation all the way out to the year 2050. And this is an absolutely huge undertaking. We need to do more in the next decade than we've delivered in the last century. So now we're going to take a look at the GIS system we use to create these scenarios. We call it our Resource Identification and Optimization System, or RIO for short.
So the first step of analysis in RIO is to identify any hard constraints. So in this example, we're going to be planning for one of our critical sectors, offshore wind. And the data sets we're going to use for that include existing infrastructure, such as oil and gas platforms, legislative data, like highly protected marine areas, health and safety considerations, and technical exclusions, like areas that are too shallow for development. We use Rio to bring these data sets together, and we can now see where offshore wind should not be deployed. To plan for the future of the seabed, we need to model cost and constraint for each of our sectors. In this map, we can see the cost for constructing offshore wind, with the darker, more expensive areas being areas with more challenging conditions. We also model soft constraints to take into account other interests in the marine space. Now, these interests will be impacted in different ways. Therefore, we have to prioritize in our analysis. We use a separate tool, AHP, to represent these impacts as weights in our model. Rio interconnects these enterprise components as part of a system of systems. Analytical hierarchical processing, or AHP, is a mathematical technique that helps us to organize our soft constraints and calculate weights for our model. To facilitate this, we group our constraints into categories, starting with economic, environmental, and social. Within these categories, we group further into industries, and within these industries, we have our data sets. At each one of these tier levels, we run pairwise comparisons, where we compare the level of constraint within these groups 2 items at a time. This means we're only ever comparing like for like, rather than trying to compare 2 completely unrelated constraints. And through this comparison of hundreds of data sets at each of these tier levels, AHP calculates the weights for our model and feeds that back into the GIS. We use Rio to bring together data sets that represent these constraints, geoprocess them as needed, and overlay them to create our constraint model output. Here we can see the constraint model output for offshore wind, with the areas shown in pink being those that are more highly constrained and therefore more challenging for development, through to the areas that are less constrained, shown in light blue. We combine our cost and constraint models to identify potential areas of opportunity for each of our sectors out to the year 2050. To date, we've identified potential areas of opportunity for 12 of the sectors that we manage. And in this cartographic nightmare that you can see on the screen, each of the colors represents a different sector. If we display this as a heat map, we can see that there's lots of overlap in future opportunity, with up to 8 of the 12 sectors overlapping in any one given location. This isn't necessarily a problem, as there are co-location opportunities that could benefit everybody, but it is an indication of the issues and opportunities that need to be addressed. We explore this further by creating integrated scenarios that look to deconflict the space. One of our greatest challenges is that there is a near infinite number of ways to configure each sector in each scenario. So to help with this, we've developed an automated deployment tool that iterates through different options based on the cost and constraint information that's provided to it. In this example, we can see the tool iterating through different options for location and configuration of offshore wind sites. In this example, looking to optimize based on lowest cost to feed into a scenario. This automation has saved us hundreds of hours of analyst time. And by being able to iterate through more options, we ultimately come to a more optimal answer. The result of this is that we could be saving billions of pounds in offshore wind development costs, which means lower energy bills for all of us. We further developed other deployment solvers as well, including this one here that's looking at cable routes. So in this example, it is iterating through options connecting an offshore wind site back to the onshore grid. Through this iteration of thousands of different options, this means that we can select the best one. And the great thing about this is that we don't have to run routing geoprocesses for hundreds of cables and hundreds of pipelines across hundreds of scenarios, saving us hours of time.
So here we see 2 of our scenarios side by side, Both of these deliver everything that we need to out to 2050, but the left-hand side scenario is delivered by optimizing at lowest cost, and the right-hand side scenario delivered by minimizing the impact on the environment. So one of the classic challenges and trade-offs that we see. So if we zoom in a bit and isolate offshore wind, we can see that each of these blue areas is a potential future offshore wind farm. We see the different spatial distribution, but if we look at the stats, we can see that the low-cost scenario is delivering in the best 20% of cost-optimized locations. But when you put the environment first and turn the dial up on that, it jumps up to 43%. If we look at the nature overlap, so how these scenarios overlap with marine protected areas, it's no surprise that the scenario that's focused on optimizing for the environment doesn't overlap with any of the MPAs. But when we look at the low-cost scenario, it overlaps with nearly 1,800 square kilometers. So quite a considerable overlap to work through. And we could look at other sectors as well. So we see a similar pattern. We see the low-cost scenario on the left. That is overlapping with locations, some locations of fishing, some locations of leisure activities, and some locations of navigation, so marine ships. And we see similar overlaps with the good for environment scenario, but they're to a slightly lesser extent. Now, we use these dashboards to explore our scenarios and interrogate the information we have, but also to share it with decision makers so that they can be fully informed. So here we see on the screen different versions of our 2050 scenarios that are prioritizing different aspects. So we can turn the dial on different prioritizations and understand the trade-offs and the implications that result. So we know we need to deliver 8 times more renewable energy. We want to have enough seabed telecommunication cables to keep us all connected in the world of AI. We also want to lock millions of tons of carbon away under the seabed and do this while we preserve and enhance nature, but also leave space for critical shipping, fishing, also defense activities and other critical uses. So these scenarios are absolutely key to us, understanding those trade-offs. We really want to make sure that we don't regret any decisions that we make today, tomorrow. We bring all this information together into what we call our marine delivery route map. So we're immensely proud of this. For the first time, we can show how activities can come together for the future and how we've built that information, and we can share it with stakeholders and illustrate options that we see for the future of the marine space. Here we see in the background one of our scenarios cycling through with a build out from today to 2050. Now, we couldn't do any of this without the power of GIS. GIS allows us to bring the layers of information together. It allows us to visualize them. It allows us to undertake the analytics and modeling that Joe's highlighted. But critically, it allows us to collaborate with others. The Crown Estate, we're not the only organization that has a role in the marine space. There are many other organizations that do. There are many other stakeholders that have an interest. And we need to be able to represent their interests. We need to be able to explain the information that we're creating and collaborate with others so that we're all pulling in the same direction. So hopefully, in this brief talk, we've managed to highlight the opportunities that the marine space holds. And if we plan this well, and we get the right activity in the right location at the right time, it can go a really long way to help address some of the greatest challenges we face. Thank you.